I'm Matt Volz. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is Sports Hour on WNYF.
This one's for the real ballers and shot callers, the sisterhood of women in tech. They're discovering cures, building apps, and programming the blockchain. They're CEOs, worldwide hustlers who can make it rain. They're tearing down the old boys club and seeing big gains. Because when women in tech come together, you know they make that change.
Every day,
millions of people are connecting.
And even though we're overcoming obstacles,
watching each other's backs,
and banding together,
we should still make an effort.
To get to know each other.
On a deeper level.
Father.
Cosplayer.
Mentor.
Actor.
It's time we take a step forward.
Come together.
And discover
how accepting our differences
can make us stronger.
How prepared is your family if a hurricane shows up at your doorstep, or a flood, or a blizzard? You can't just turn away a natural disaster. That's why it's important to go to ready.gov/plan now. It has the tools and tips you need to make an emergency plan with your family. So if disaster comes knocking,
let's go.
You'll be ready to help keep your family safe.
It's just a pizza.
Yes. Make a plan today.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school or even let alone go to college, so I'm trying to break that barrier. Every day after work, went straight to school, studied hard, and it paid off. I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me. The high school diploma is just added to the confidence, and now I feel unstoppable.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back to Sports Hour on WNYF. I'm Matt Volz. I'm now joined by Jenna Polito to talk some NHL hockey, and the Sabres are underway right now, tied at 2 in the second period.
Yeah, this game, honestly, I mean, starting off, we had Tage Thompson out with a lower body injury that occurred on Monday's game. And then UPL is also out with a minor ailment. That's all Lindy Ruff is saying about this. He said he should be able to play on Saturday. So Devin Levi's in net, and he's looking pretty good so far, I would say.
Yeah, he's been solid. The first goal of the game that St. Louis scored was off of a bad turnover in front of the Sabres net. And the Sabres had a fast start to this game, but then the Blues were able to jump on them, and one chance goes in the back of the net. And it just goes to show, I think, pinpoint some of the Sabres' struggles is you have to get the simple things right. And the simple things being, don't turn the puck over in front of your own net, because that puts your goaltender in a very difficult position. There's been talk of potentially, now that the Sabres have claimed James Reimer off of waivers, could the Sabres maybe send Devin Levi back down to Rochester instead of what he's been doing and backing up Luukkonen and only playing, once every week or so, Jenna? And I don't know if there's any truth to that, but maybe Reimer gets in and maybe the Sabres make a decision to send Levi down.
Yeah, I mean, the whole James Reimer thing is a little bit interesting. We originally signed him as an unrestricted free agent during the summer. It was like a $1-year, $1 million contract. And then Anaheim claimed him, so we reclaimed him to take Mattias Samuelsson's roster spot, who is now out indefinitely due to also a lower body injury. Samuelsson, I gotta say, he's never been my favorite at all. I mean, after he signed his 7-year, $30 million contract, he has missed 71 of the 180 games that he has played to date. And I mean, it's just...
Yeah, I mean, Samuelsson is under contract with the Sabres until 2030, and while he provides a valuable role, he wasn't all that good in that role last year, and you don't want to criticize a player for getting injured all the time because that's kind of out of their control, but it seems like Samuelsson goes down for multiple weeks at a time, like every season, Jenna.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is not what we want, especially with Lindy Ruff. I mean, he's had Mattias Samuelsson as a healthy scratch for the past 3 games that we actually won, just because, his whole philosophy about applying pressure and just getting to the puck and also being sure not to turn it over in our goal. And I think Mattias Samuelsson is a big contender for that. He ended up doing that a lot.
Yeah, that's one of his biggest weaknesses as a player. He's not really the type of defenseman that I think Lindy Ruff wants on this team exactly. I mean, he's stuck with him. Mattias is under contract until 2030, which is actually longer than Lindy Ruff's contract as head coach of the Sabres. I think the issue is Mattias Samuelsson is sometimes a very slow-moving, kind of stay-at-home, typical defensive defenseman. And those type of defensemen do have a role, but the issue is he's not jumping up into the play like you see with guys like Rasmus Dahlin or Owen Power or Bo Byram or even Jacob Bryson or Connor Clifton, who have both been pretty solid so far this season in the games that they've played. With Lindy, I think it's that, and another issue with it is Lindy Ruff has made clear for years, and this was the case in his first tenure coaching the team, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're not playing well, you're not going to play. I mean, I have memories of Lindy Ruff benching guys like Thomas Vanek and Max Afinogenov, even in the playoffs, Jenna, because they didn't play well enough, and it's led to wins before, so maybe can Lindy get this team on the right track, even if it means he's got to put some key players on the bench?
I mean, it's definitely hard to tell, especially at this point in the season. I believe we're like 5-8-1. We're second to last in the Atlantic Division. It's just like cyclical. We're going 3 games we win and then 3 games we lose. So I don't know. It's just the inconsistency is really hard to tell right now. We are coming off those 3-game wins, which I would like to apologize to you, Matt, because I did say you might jinx them on the Saturday game, which they actually ended up winning 3-2 in a shootout against Calgary.
In all these years, I mentioned this on News 11 last night for anyone who might have tuned in for that. In all my years of going to Sabres games, never once before Saturday had I ever seen them win in a shootout. That was the first time in probably the 20th Sabres game that I've been to in my life that I saw them win in a shootout. I was 0-1 in the shootout in my life before that.
I don't think I've ever seen a shootout win.
I've only seen them in the last couple of years. They played Montreal a couple years ago, and they lost in a shootout on Pride Night a few years back. I was there for that one. I've seen one overtime game. My first Sabres game went to overtime, weirdly enough. I was like 4 years old. They beat Boston. I don't remember any of it, but a little tidbit about your host, Matt, I guess. So Sabres were tied at 2 in this game. Other key players that are not playing up to expectations. Jack Quinn has 1 goal this year. And Jenna, you have to wonder, is it still an injury concern with Quinn, or is he just not playing up to par at all?
I'm not really sure. I think Quinn is another one of those players, a little bit better than Samuelsson, but he is one of those players we see going out on injury reserve a lot. He's not very consistent, but last year he had a breakout season. We just haven't really seen very much from him yet, and I'm hoping we see more. However, one player that did stand out would be Rasmus Dahlin, who he made a record last night as the 3rd defenseman in career assists. I believe he has 235. So he's right behind Phil Housley and Mike Ramsey in Sabres defenseman history. Just a really great game, especially for our captain. I think that was definitely the best move, to make him the captain instead of assistant, just move him up. But yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, Dahlin is up there, and he's going to end up being up there in terms of all-time Sabres defensemen. You talk about guys like Phil Housley, who's a little bit of a sensitive subject for Sabres fans of our generation, given how badly his head coaching tenure went. Mike Ramsey, of course, was a legendary defenseman. Bill Haidt from back in the 70s and 80s. Dahlin is kind of up there with those names already. I wouldn't say he's to a Housley or Ramsey level just yet, but he's up there in that conversation. I know there's a few other non-Sabres things in the NHL you wanted to get to, Jenna, so we'll get to those too. Yeah,
first I just wanted to, we're about a month and a half, maybe 2 months into the season, so they're starting to get polls into the NHL awards and who's going to win the Calder, which is the top rookie, or the Calder, the Hart Trophy, which is the MVP, the Vizina, and then also, oh my God, why am I blanking? The Defenseman Trophy.
Oh, the Norris. Yes, the Norris and the
Trophy.
Vezina for goalie. Yeah.
Yeah. So they published an article out. I think it's very, it's a little bit surprising, but for the Calder Trophy, right now we have the leader, Logan Stankoven, or
Yeah, Logan Stankoven. Yeah.
Stankoven for the Dallas Stars. However, I would like to also put into contention Dustin Wolf, who is the rookie goalie for Calgary Flames. He was brought up from the AHL. He was a draft pick in round 7 of the 2019. However, he has just been on fire lately. I mean, what is it?
Yeah, and Dustin Wolf, if I remember correctly, was a former Team USA goaltender at the World Juniors. I believe he was a backup to Spencer Knight. So it's interesting to see, Wolf coming along for Calgary and a team that is maybe not necessarily the best on paper, but they're definitely improving. There's a few other players that could be in line for some other awards. Connor Hellebuck is in strong contention for the Vezina, and why not? He's the best goalie in the NHL, potentially by name, and the Winnipeg Jets are off to an unbelievable start, Jenna. 15-1-1 through their first 17 games. Unbelievable. And this is a Jets team, too, Jenna, that, on paper, are they good enough to be a 15-1-1 team? I'm
not sure. I mean, it's hard to tell right now. Looking at the standings, I believe Winnipeg is first in their division with 30 games. However, they have played 16 games, which is a few more than some of the teams trailing them, like the Wild and the Dallas Stars. However, speaking of the Minnesota Wild, if we're going to talk about the MVP, we got to talk about Kirill Kaprizov, who is a forward on the Minnesota Wild, and this vote wasn't even close. I believe he had 78% of the votes. He's just, a lot of people are really contending the 10-2-3 start to him just being this breakout player.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you look at awards across the league, and I think sometimes as Sabres fans, you get sort of very close-minded to focus on your team, but it's fun to look at the rest of the NHL too and kind of see where things are. As far as the Sabres are concerned, so they're at home tonight against the Blues. That finishes up a 3-game homestand. This is a team that we mentioned it earlier in the show. We mentioned it earlier in this segment that Buffalo really, really needs to build some sort of consistency. The Sabres just have got to put something together and keep progressing down the line, Jenna, in Lindy Ruff's first season as head coach.
Yes, I just want to update the score of the game. The Blues have once again scored. I believe it was, not sure how, I might butcher this name, Mott or something. It looks like it went off Rasmus Dahlin's foot into the net, too.
Right before the end of the period, too. Doesn't that always happen to Buffalo, I swear?
It always happens. That's kind of what happened in the Canadiens game that we lost.
Yeah.
It was a 7-5 loss. There were just so many goals scored in this game. It was like a Thanksgiving feast, like with the Pilgrims and everything like that.
Yeah, pretty much, exactly.
But,
everyone eats like with the Bills.
Everyone eats.
Like with the Bills. Well, thanks for joining me to recap some NHL action. Hopefully the Sabres can make a comeback.
Hopefully.
I'll be back in a few minutes with Brock Papke to recap last week's NASCAR Championship. Thanks for tuning in to Sports Hour on WNYF.
When you think of the local lowdown, what do you think of?
Well, when I think of the local lowdown, it's the live music that we have played in the studio.
It's got to be the laughs we shared. The memorable moments during the whole thing. Oh my God, so fun.
The local lowdown for me is the people behind the scenes, the amazing team that we have making the show.
Oh, it's got to be exploring all sorts of genres and music I've never heard before.
Oh, easy. Going out to shows and talking to artists and getting the latest news on what they have planned for the future.
It's about these artists, man. Giving them a platform to showcase what they've worked so hard on and show their music to the community. It's all about supporting the local scene of music to keep it running for years to come. And of course, the band merch. You can't forget about the merch.
down there. You gotta do the same. Post office. All you do is sign. So don't get nervous. Sign your name. For selective service. It takes no time. Just sign on the line at the post office. For selective service.
Hey guys, if you're about to turn 18, you've got to register with Selective Service. It's simple. Just go down to the post office, fill out a card, and turn it in. That's all there is to it. There's no draft now. You're just adding your name to Selective Service's list in case there's a national emergency.
So if you're 18 now, Selective Service, you gotta get down to the post office.
Register with Selective Service. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the law.
Takes no time. Just sign on the line at the post office. Selective Service.
Welcome back to Sports Hour on WNYF. I'm Matt Volz. I'm now joined by Brock Papke, and we're going to recap the championship race for the NASCAR Cup Series. And Brock, it was an interesting one. That's for sure.
It was a bunch of throwing finishes. We got Jason Logano. I think he won, which I would like to say that's that's his third division title.
Yes, his third championship.
Yeah. Last one was 2022, which was a long time ago at this point.
Yeah, you're trying to make me feel old or what?
I'm older than you. Shut up.
Yeah, you are.
But yeah, no, it was a thrilling finish. It was just simply put legendary. If you want to put a How I Met Your Mother reference in there.
There you go.
And yeah, what do you think about it, Matt?
Well, okay, so I actually do have some thoughts on this. Being a NASCAR fan, right? So. Yeah. I'll take a minute to briefly explain the structure of the NASCAR playoffs to anyone who's not quite familiar. And yes, NASCAR does have playoffs.
Yes.
So the final 10 races of the regular season are the playoffs. How they do it is 16 drivers, the top 16 in the points, all qualify for the playoffs. But there's a little bit of a caveat to this. If you win a race in the regular season, you are into the playoffs. So it's everybody who won a race plus anybody else to fill out the 16 drivers that make the playoffs. So the first round is the round of 16. Each round is 3 races. So you have the round of 16. After those 3 races, the top remaining 12 move on to the round of 12.
Yep.
Again, though, if you win a race, if as a playoff driver you win a race in one round, you're automatically guaranteed to go to the next round. And this benefited Joey Logano greatly.
Exactly.
Logano did not run particularly well. In some of these rounds, Logano did not run particularly well. But he got the win in one of the races in the round of 8, which locked him into the championship race.
Yes.
And then all he needed to do was just beat the other 3 drivers for the championship, Rock. And there's a lot of questions about that playoff format, about how good it really is.
There is. And I do agree, like, there's, like, some questionable stuff. Like, you can say, like, oh, this one race that you won, like, back in February, you have, like, a bunch of availability to do it in October. And, like, it just depends on that. But I do have to say, it was still, it's like a weird structure, I'll tell you that much. It's more weirder than taking someone to prom and just simply not having a great night.
It makes me, there's a lot of older NASCAR fans that got accustomed to the way the format used to be, which used to be just throughout the entire season, whoever had the most overall points would win. There's a lot of NASCAR fans that are kind of, grumpy, bah humbug, why isn't this the way it used to be, and you're not rewarding the best drivers for being the champions. Here's where I kind of go on this, Brock. I feel like every other major sport has playoffs. Football has playoffs. Baseball, basketball, hockey, they all have playoffs. And sometimes you get teams that are not necessarily the best in the regular season that win the championship. And sometimes the teams that are the best on paper and in the regular season don't win it. Let's think about the 2007 New England Patriots. That team went undefeated in the regular season, but they lost in the Super Bowl. By the logic of saying, well, it should be the best team throughout the season, the Super Bowl would have been irrelevant. And that gave us one of the greatest games of all time, especially for us Bills fans who love watching New England lose.
Yes.
So here's my sort of perspective on this. I like NASCAR having playoffs because it gives you a sense of you got to show up when it matters the most. One of the issues with the way it used to be, when it used to be just cumulative throughout the season, sometimes you'd get a driver like Dale Earnhardt, who's on my laptop sticker. I'll show it on screen. He's on there, number 3. Sometimes the problem would be you'd get a driver that would be so dominant throughout the course of the season that they would lock up the championship with 2 or 3 races to go, and then the last couple races of the season are completely meaningless.
Yeah.
And that's what NASCAR is sort of trying to get rid of. They're trying to make it like other sports in the sense that there's that dramatic playoff factor, Brock, and to a certain extent, it's worked. It has frustrated a lot of fans, but to a certain extent, it's worked.
I mean, you explained it best, man. Like
I've been a NASCAR fan for a long time.
Me too, man. But it's just more or less like it just shows like you know, like the meme with the NFL have like script writers and such.
Yeah.
Well, they do, but this is another story on itself. But it's more or less just like trying to be like entertainment for the sake of entertainment.
Yeah.
It's more just like, oh, this one guy that you probably never heard of won this, even though Logano won like 3 times already. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents on the entire thing, honestly. So
yeah, I think it's. I can see the argument for wanting tweaks to the playoff format. I think in general, the idea is good. I like the idea, and again, this is just me, but I like the idea of having that playoff-like atmosphere in NASCAR where you want your best drivers to show up on the biggest stages. You know, you want your drivers like nowadays, your drivers like Joey Logano or Kyle Larson or William Byron. Kyle Larson, one of the most dominant drivers throughout the regular season. But Kyle Larson didn't make the most of it when he needed to, and Logano ends up taking the championship.
Yeah.
People are frustrated that Logano is the champion. I will admit I'm not a Joey Logano fan, but I will say this. If you show up in the biggest races, if you make the most of the moment in the biggest moments, you should be a champion because that's the way it is in all other sports.
Yeah.
You get teams that get hot going into the playoffs. Look at the Detroit Tigers in baseball. The Tigers got hot in September and made the playoffs. Mm-hmm. You're going to say the teams that are better on paper because they might have had a better record in mid-August. You're saying they deserve to be in the playoffs more than the Tigers do because the Tigers weren't dominant throughout the course of the regular season. You know, I like the idea of you've got to show up when it matters most, Brock.
Yeah, no, you do. It's like how to say this well. It's like you're not first, you're last. Yeah. As I has briefly misquoted on the doc right here. That's from like the almighty Ricky Bobby. If you're not first, you're last, and you gotta be there just to show out and just to kill it, to put in layman's terms. And well, it's more just this entire race itself just shows us like how playoffs work overall. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, to quote Talladega Nights, obviously,
Again,
which
yeah.
is like maybe one of the most legendary sports movies of all time, I think it's interesting to note this if you're not first, you're last mentality. And of course, it makes sense in NASCAR. You get a race with 40 different drivers, and there's only one winner, right? And there's only one champion at the end of the season, despite the fact that you might have maybe 60 or 70 different individuals run at least one race throughout the course of the season. And the playoff format, I think, it generates a lot of discussion. They used to have something that was like almost halfway in between. It was called the Chase for the Cup, and it was the last 10 races and the top 10 drivers. And at the end of those 10 races, whoever was the top in points would win the championship. And this was good. It produced more drama. But again, sometimes you had the same issue, Brock, of you might have one driver that just absolutely dominates, And then all they need to do going into the last race of the year is not finish in like dead last, and they win the championship. I remember in 2013, Jimmy Johnson was so dominant. Jimmy Johnson just had to finish like higher than, I think it was like 26th or something like that in the last race of the year. So you might have a driver that doesn't even need to finish in the top 20, and they win a championship. And it's also, I don't know, like, it's kind of weird if in the last race of the year, and this happens a lot, you have a different driver that wins the race than that wins the championship.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, you might get a driver that wins the race and yay, you're celebrating, but celebrating what? Because there's a champion to be crowned. And I would always feel bad if someone like won their first career race in that last race, because then your celebration gets completely overshadowed by the fact that someone just won the championship and is hoisting the cup and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, any final thoughts, Brock?
I mean, it's like winning your first Oscar and never winning it the rest of your career. But like it's like overshadowing, like in the credits you have like, oh, Academy Award winner, blah 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 blah. Then like that's for like the rest of your career, and you never even show up to the Oscar ceremony at all.
Right.
And you're not even nominated, you're not even invited. You're just that one person who got nominated and won the first time ever, like 15 years ago. That's how I'm like comparing this entire thing.
I see. Yes, yes. Well, thanks, Brock, for joining me to recap NASCAR action. Always wonderful to talk NASCAR. Before we do sign off, I do want to give a quick shout out to a family friend of ours, Jim Zaffron, a family friend of mine, was named as the honorary military veteran of the game at tonight's Sabres game.
Nice.
So I want to wish congratulations to him. He's a family friend of mine, and many congratulations to him and thank him for his service to our country. Well, that does it for tonight's episode of Sports Hour. Thank you, Brock, for joining us to talk about NASCAR, as well as thanks to Brady Mazurek, Jack Hoadley for their talk about NFL action, and Jenna Polito for her talk about the NHL. Once again, I'm Matt Volz. We'll catch you next week. This has been Sports Hour. Good night.
Man, you're hot.